All right, guys, guess who is back on the social space? Well, it's no other person but our dearest activist, Dele Farotimi. Yesterday was June 12th, Democracy Day. And yes, over a month now, he has been offline. Though he told us, he informed everyone that he's going to take a break for a long time to rest, reset his brain and everything. But yesterday, being June 12th, he actually came on live and he dropped a very powerful message that each and every one of you here will not want to miss it. And as always, what's my job? Like my job is always to bring it to you guys as juicy as it drops. So this video is going to be a very long one. So you just have to sit back, relax, get a popcorn, a drink or something, listen to the wisdom coming out of this man. If possible, get a pen and a paper because you're about to enjoy unlimited wisdom from the source itself. Enjoy Daily Farotimi teachings. Don't forget to subscribe. Please drop a comment below, guys.
You because you guys, it's evening in Lagos now. But like my compatriots in exile, those of you who had enough sense to have escaped, especially those of you who came to America, where I'm currently broadcasting from, good morning to you. Those of you who are at home, good evening to you. Beauty of the world. We call it one global village. I'm not in a chatting mood this morning, so that our usual thing that we will do be like the week that was. I haven't paid attention to what we have been doing in our asylum, except for the fascicle gyration about 30 kilometers, the one with the bearded fool telling all kind of stories. And Shegun, well done, Olo. Well done. Brilliant job with that report on the coastal road. There are many roads this morning. I will talk about all of them, but let's just say that we're living in very interesting times. Those who once saw everything that was bad are now applauding evil and declaring it good. So we're living in a very interesting season. But it's good to be back with you guys. Don't worry, I'm not back for good. I'm not going to recommence my weekly broadcast, but today is it's just a special day, June 12th. And in honor of so many, there's a lot to say. So we will talk about them this morning. So I'm seeing the live chat. Just let's call this a way of me settling back into conversing with you, even though the subject is not a particularly palatable one. It rarely ever is. Have you noticed that when you find Nigerians of all hues gathered together in a place, pretty much like the British would always start their conversation by discussing the weather in their country. They've got this miserable climate in Britain. My sympathies and heart goes towards those of you who are forced to survive in that miserable place they call Britain. Nasty people, nasty weather, or shall I say nasty people, nastier weather, or is it nasty people? No, nasty weather, nastier people. The weather speaks to the people themselves. One moment they are smiling with you, the next moment they are ready to snap off your head. So those of you who have to live in that crazy place, I'm very sorry for you, that weather. But when you see Nigerians gather, the certain conversation starter for all of us has always been the situation in Nigeria. Once you start that, you can be certain that you have something to talk about for the rest of the evening if it is your intention to self-flagellate. But enough of that. Good morning, everyone. It's been a while. It's good to be with you. I'm not particularly happy, but you are not here to listen to me crack you up. If you wanted that, you'll probably be listening to my brother Basket Mouth or Teju Baby Face or one of the many. But this morning, I have elected for myself a subject that was provoked by a trip. So since I've been away from our madhouse, I've had time to do a whole lot of things that I haven't done in a while. One of the things I've always enjoyed doing before Nigeria went to the dogs was to drive, travel by road. So in my younger days, even though it was already bad, unlike the days when some people could drive from Lagos to Maiduguri without worrying about bandits, robbers, or anything of the sort. When you find ample accounts from people in our father's generation, you could read Wole Soyinka's poems, The Journey. He has so many, and he told a lot of stories about traveling by day, by night, any time of the day, and heading towards any part of the country without any trepidation. You didn't even have to worry about crazy drivers back then because we still had a system that taught people how to drive. So today's topic has been provoked by Johnny. So I titled it, I said, When the Road Becomes a Metaphor. I believe that's the topic we have, or at least something reflective of that, because that was what I discussed. Yeah, Nigeria, when the road becomes a metaphor. What is a metaphor? For those of you who did not study the English literature, a metaphor is essentially a figure of speech, something by which you compare or you explain another thing. So I am using the road as a metaphor for Nigeria. And the road is an apt metaphor for our country because if you had no idea of the road as a metaphor for our peculiar circumstances, if you had no idea of it before, in the last 26 years of what we have labeled democracy, the road has acquired particular significance because it can be used as a marker for explaining where we are as a people. So I'm going to be employing the road as a metaphor this morning on multiple levels. But let me go to what provoked the topic. So I'm currently in Nevada on the west coast of America, and I had to attend a business meeting in California last week. I needed to speak to some people. So I went to Southern California and I went by road. I drove with my brother. We rented a car. Total cost of the rental, to and fro plus fueling, I spent less than $200. That's just to let you understand. If I wouldn't explain it, but let me just begin by saying this. Where I went as a round trip was over 1,000 kilometers. My brother drove us when we were going. I drove when we were returning. Because my brother was driving as we were going, I had enough opportunities to observe what I was seeing on the way. And the only comparable that I have in my head was a journey I undertook over 10 years ago, more like maybe like 15 years ago, for the wedding ceremony of a friend in Mubi, in what is Adamawa State. Mubi, of course, is farther than Southern California, but I believe we flew into Yola and we hired vehicles to take us to Mubi. The road to Mubi from Gombe offers some of the most beautiful scenery you would ever come across. At least I've traveled a fair bit of the world. I haven't seen much, but I've been outside Nigeria for a bit. I've traveled the world a little bit. I've seen a fair bit of the west coast of Africa. I've seen a little of America, and I've seen a fair bit of Britain and Europe. But I can assure you that the road from Gombe to Mubi features arguably the most beautiful mountain sites believe it's the Cameroon mountain range that you'd be seeing on the right as you're driving towards Mobi. Beautiful in the extreme. But the road itself, Boni Aruna, I believe it's from Mobi. It was the governor who stripped that road. He stripped the road and he never rebuilt it. And the journey to Mobi was tortuous in the extreme. No car, whether it be 4 by 4, could do more than 30, 40 kilometers per hour because the road was better if it had been left alone, according to the locals who were with us. But Boni Aruna came and scraped the road, but never built it, and is the road to his own village. That is one road as a metaphor for a country. The hotel I stayed in Mubi at that time, maybe about 3 years later, was bombed by Boko Haram, a scourge foisted on Nigerians by the ruiners of Nigeria. That was a journey. It was a road. It was in Nigeria. The journey to Southern California, it went largely through mountain ranges. We had no worries about bandits. We had no worries about robbers. There were no Fulani terrorists. There were no high pub. There were no unknown gunmen. We didn't have trepidations. There was no need to be casting and binding before we would embark on a journey. It was the same road. A road in Nigeria, a road in America. It's a road. And don't let anybody tell me about how young our country is. I've traveled in Dubai, in the Emirates. And in the Emirates are just as young as we are, much younger, less endowed. I traveled kilometers, hundreds of kilometers of pristine road. Their newness meant that they could do it better than the Americans of whom I speak. They have better roads. The road is merely a metaphor. What is it about horse that has made it impossible for us to build something as basic as roads? But like I said, the road is merely a metaphor. If we are refusing to build something as basic as roads, let's talk about another road. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. It remains one of the roads on which the Nigerian government has spent the most time and money. Second term of Obasanjo, the effort to build that road began. Obasanjo left office 2007, 18 years ago. They haven't stopped building the road, but the road is already destroyed even before they are done. What is it about us that makes us incapable of doing something as basic as building a road? What is it? Remember, We're using the road as a metaphor. Remember, I told you we drove over 1,000 kilometer round trip. Oh, we didn't run into a single police checkpoint. Hmm. I know, right? Those of you who've been outside Nigeria understand that that's normal. But for the Nigerian, it's unthinkable. Over 1,000 kilometer, not one police checkpoint. Mhm. Oh yeah, no fear of bandits, no worries about terrorists. What is it about horse? These are basic questions that we need to be asking of ourselves because I'm 57 now. These are issues I grew up observing, and they're still with us. Are we going to leave this for our children? Oh, yeah. Whilst I've been away from our madhouse, I learned you were commissioning nearly 20 and nearly 10. That Reno, the goat, turned into 30 kilometers. And then all of you began to argue whether it was 20, whether it was plus this, whether it was plus that. Nobody is talking about the fact that this is a road that did not go through any tender board. Nobody is talking about the fact that this is a road to petition, a road that has taken by far more priority in terms of fiscal commitment than the future of children. It's a road of corruption. It's a road that tells us about who we have become as a people, a captured people. The road is merely a metaphor. What has happened to us? Nary a bleat from anybody. Those who should speak, they are deodorizing it by their attendance in that kind of fraudulent gathering. The road is merely a metaphor for what we have become. A captured people who have elevated lies into an art. What does the road tell us? And it's not just those who ruin the country. It speaks, the road as a metaphor, speaks to each and every one of us. Have you ever noticed the way we drive? No respect for the next man, no knowledge of basic driving rules. The way we drive speaks to who we have become. Let me give you an example. And this can only be understood by those of you who ever bothered to attend driving schools or even learn driving signs or road signs and all of that. You get to a roundabout and you're the one entering the roundabout. You know, because you're trained, that you've got to give way to the person in the roundabout. So you pause because you know they have the right to go. And then the guy coming behind you is hooting his horn and screeching at you and screaming that we drive now, the law, go, go, go. The idiot in the roundabout is also screaming at you, bearing, go now, we go, believing that he's the one who has to give you right of way. The idiot behind is hooting because he believes he's the one who has right of way. Imagine you're the one in the roundabout insisting on your right. You're going to be crushed. But that is the way we live. That is who we have become as a collective. We can point to our government as the base of our ruination. But are we devoid of blame in who we have become? Oh, yeah. On our way back from Southern California, I drove. Now remember this, I wouldn't touch the wheel in England. They always drive on the wrong side of the road. But I can drive in America. So I drove coming back to Vegas. And it was a completely different experience. I could drive without fear of pothole. There's nowhere else in Nigeria except perhaps parts of Abuja where I could drive without having to worry about potholes. And I'm not saying they don't have potholes on American streets, but not on the freeway, not on the highway. I could drive without worrying about potholes. That was the first thing. I know it's very simple, but it's a mind shift. I don't have to drive dodging potholes. I didn't have to drive wondering where the police checkpoint would be. I didn't have to drive defensively wondering when they'll throw a rim on the road or when if a terrorist might jump on the road and start spraying bullets in order to kidnap people for ransom. I didn't have to do any of that. I didn't have to live with the paranoia that defines and characterizes every driving experience on Nigerian roads. I felt myself liberated. I wasn't limited. And it brought back to me again the constant theme. I shared it once, and that was even before I traveled out and came to Britain and came to America. I said, we live quarter life with a live for Nigeria. I take it back. We're not even living. We're merely existing as a people. We exist. We exist. That's what we're doing in Nigeria. We're not living. But I've not asked us to come together on this day so that I may bellyache. Nah, I have no interest in bellyaching. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Timmy. I didn't have to look out for cars driving in the opposite direction facing me. I could actually be calm behind the wheels. They're building a road to infamy. But our road speaks more about us than it speaks about them. We allowed it. We allowed it. And we are always allowing it because we are no different from those who have ruined our country. We are them and they are us. We are a reflection of who they are as a collective. Because if we are different or better than them, we wouldn't be in the mess that we are in. We will not be in the mess that we are in if we are better than them. But we are no different from those reigning our country. We are not different. We are no different from them. But like I said, this is not intended as a belly aching session. It's a call to awakening. My purpose is to seek to awaken you. I need you to wake up to the fact that when you are traveling on the road and you keep seeing the same signs on the road, it is suggestive that you are traveling in circles and you should retake your bearing. In retaking your bearing, you must learn to admit that you have traveled off track. It is in an admission of the fact that you are not on the direction of travel that you desire. You realize that you are traveling in a direction different from the desired one. That is the point where you begin to pull back from the brink and you turn back. But what have we done as a collective? Instead of turning back, we have kept traveling in the wrong direction. when everything we are seeing to tell us that we are merely traveling in circles. Some people, for whatever reason, have come to believe that they can enforce their will, however evil or inequitable it be, on all of us. But if you're traveling in a bus and the driver is drinking paraga, lighting colos, smoking this and smoking that, and you're merely applauding as he is imbibing and overspeeding, you can hardly complain and label yourself a victim by the time the bus crashes. You are an enabler. So since we're on the track of using the road as a metaphor, how about we speak to the passengers in the bus that is traveling in the wrong direction on the road? You have a duty to speak to the drivers. You have a duty, at a minimum, to fight to correct that driver, even if it means wrestling the steering, if that is the last resort. They'll tell you that the journey to today began on June 12, 1993. That's true. But it's a journey that has not ended. If anything, we've been derailed. We are not on the right track. My singular duty may very well be to tell you we are not on the right track. If we kept traveling on this road for the next 100 years, it will merely be a road to perdition. Nothing will change on this road. If you truly desire any change, let me tell you what we need to be doing. I see that Randy Peter has worked tirelessly, worked by far harder than I could ever have worked on the subject of electoral reform. A lot of you have also worked with him, but you need to be doing more. I'm not saying this because I believe that the system will give us what we need as a tool to free ourselves from their hold. But I'm saying this because I believe that this proves any resistance by the system to consequential electoral reform after the evils of 2023 tells those who are skeptical when we point out the fact that we've been enslaved that these are not mere rhetoric, and perhaps it might be the point from which to galvanize you all into understanding that there is a need for peaceful protests, sit at homes where necessary, but certainly something has to be done because we cannot vote our way out of this mess. The journey began in 1993, but it's not the glorious picture they want to paint for you. So let me tell you what happened. Because like I said, we're using the road as a metaphor. So let's use the road. It's a journey, they keep saying, right? So it's a journey. Let's talk about that journey. I voted for the first time in 1993. We had no beavers. There wasn't any IREV. There were no computers in sight, just sheets of paper. And men and women exercising their right to vote, even under a military dictatorship. Nobody was threatening Mama Chinedu. No thugs broke anybody's heads. Ballots were not snatched. We voted by queuing. It was called Option A4. You queued behind the candidate of your choice, represented by the emblem of the party. You were given your ballot papers in the open. It was not modified open ballot system, option A4. And we ticked and dropped our ballot papers. Votes were counted in front of all of us. So before we left the polling booth, we knew who won in our polling booth. A manual collation of results were done across the length and breadth of Nigeria. Such was the content of what we thought was our citizenship in 1993. We voted and our votes counted until the ruiners of Nigeria, including some of those who are disguising today as champions of democracy, who are unhappy with the choices made by the Nigerian people. Can you imagine? They were unhappy with the choices we made. And they are unashamed to say so. That cretin in the rock at Mina said so, even in his own book. So because they were unhappy with our choices, the election was annulled. November 1993, Abacha toppled the interim government that was kept in place by Babangida by the time he retreated from power, after the voices of the people made clear that he was no longer wanted in power. We had a voice. People had not been compromised. We were on a journey. You know how you are traveling from, I've done night bus and day bus from Lagos to Abuja, Lagos to Owerri in my younger days as a counsel. And I know how we stopped at intervals to buy things to eat on the road or to ease ourselves. Some of the persons we traveled with today, they have become human rights activists. Some have become explainers of evil, beneficiaries from evil. Where are the voices that were busy speaking loudly in the 90s? People who risked life and limb. Look at Bayo Ononuga, for instance. He risked life and limb. Look at what he has become. These were the persons who were shouting from the rooftop. Even your presidente pretended to be a Democrat. We were driving on the road to democracy. Abacha came in and took power. Persons such as Obasanjo, the very first beneficiary of the death of multiple persons on that road, on the journey to democracy, became the president. He never once found the grace to remember those who died because of the day they are celebrating today. Public holiday, and they are all busy with all kinds of flowery speeches. Even Tinubu, a beneficiary of the day who traded extensively on the mandate of Abiola, on June 12th, they stood to become governor. On June 12th, they stood to become godfather. On June 12th, they have stood to enter the office of the presidency. What have they done to acknowledge the fact that multiples were murdered, buried in unmarked graves? When the children of Kudirat attempted to sue the Nigerian government, what did the APC government do for the wrongful death of their mother? The government is aware of who killed who, but have they been able to ever acknowledge the truth? Because on that journey, we've been lying to ourselves. People have crapped on themselves, farted on the bus, derailed, and we've refused to tell ourselves the truth. Multiple rallies would have been held in Nigeria today in memory of the day, hollow memory of the day instead of hallowed memories. Persons died. People lost their wives. People lost their husbands. People lost their children. People lost fathers and mothers. And they never found any resolution as to where these persons were buried. Bacha took power November 17. Multiples killed, dumped on flatbed trucks on the Ikorodu Road. Who has ever remembered them? Who has ever cared? So as people have succumbed, we've thrown people out of the doors of that journey to perfidy that we've all embarked on as a collective. Why is it that we've all become so divided that we can't even have a chorus when we need to speak to the truth of our circumstances? What has happened to steal our voices? What has happened? We're all in that bus. And that bus is traveling aimlessly. It's on the wrong track. It's not only rickety, it's going to knock. And the best thing we can hope for, if we kept it at that, is that it knocks, not that it crashes. The only thing that is certain is that it's not sustainable in its current form. But what have we done? What have we done? We've been accomplices on a journey to perdition. Electoral reform may or may not cut it, but we have a duty as a collective to demand it. It's the minimum irreducible that we should be demanding. And it is critical that we all understand this. If we kept folding our hands as we've been doing, waiting for something to happen, nothing will happen except tragedies. We need to wake up. We need to wake up. Anything that changes Nigeria is a revolution. Anything that changes it. Even through the ballot, it had to be a revolution because it would have to mean that you stood behind your choices. Talking about electoral reform is the minimum. You supporting it is the minimum irreducible. I've watched Randy Peter laboring, and I've seen the indifference with which a lot of you have observed his labor. I left Nigeria because that was the only thing left for anyone to do before it would break into many, God knows how many multiple pieces. And it's not about ethnic thing. It's about an implosion born of frustration and hopelessness. Electoral reform perhaps offers some hope and gives us an opportunity to change things without violence. That's why we're talking about it as something that should be examined and supported. At every point, when I have traveled by road in Nigeria for any considerable distance, it has always happened that at some point on the journey, inevitably, expectedly, there'd be a checkpoint. Over the years, I've learned to look for those checkpoints. Understanding that they are inevitable, I've learned to use them for my advantage. So checkpoints became the place where I would ease myself if I needed to urinate. We don't have stop centers, unlike the Americans, who have places I could stop and ease myself and get something to eat, perhaps, or even sleep on the road. We have no such things. So I use the police checkpoints for my pit stops. Whether I want to stretch my legs, whether I want to urinate, whatever it is I might have wanted to do in the course of the journey that would have necessitated my having to stop, I'd stop just after passing the checkpoint because it's probably the safest point in the journey. In every other part of the world, commemorations are used to inspire, to remember. So I'll call today a checkpoint. June 12th. It's merely a checkpoint in that journey. So now we're at that checkpoint. Let's urinate. Let's stretch our legs. Let's reassess and let's tell ourselves the truth. Because that's the only thing I have for you. I have no guns to give you. And if you are carrying guns, I can't fault you. I have no magic wand to wave. Nah. You remember when I was weeping after I came out of jail? It was because you showed me what you could do when you act as a collective. You surprised me by your capacity to act as a community. You rose above ethnicity and religion, and you found the grace to see me as a human being above all else, and you spoke as a collective. The same manner in which you found your voice as a collective, you need to find your voice again as a collective and then begin to demand your freedom. The electoral reform thing is just a way to unite you. There's nothing partisan about demanding to be able to vote as a citizen. There's absolutely nothing partisan about that. You should be able to demand that, and you should be able to support such a demand. It's the minimum you can do. We're at that checkpoint. And if we don't use the opportunity of the checkpoint to assess where we are, to admit to the fact that we are lost, we're just traveling in circles, to admit to the fact that we can be better than we have been. If we don't use the opportunity of this checkpoint to tell ourselves these truths, when are we going to do so? We have built memorials of lies. That's why they can't honor Humphrey Nwosu. He did a phenomenal job, but he didn't do it alone. He did it with many other people, the same people who have become compromised today. They worked with him to make June 12 happen the way it happened. If you look at the long list of people who have become compromised, it becomes easy to understand why we are where we are today. But as one person has become compromised, if 10 of you would stand in their place, we will not be here. So it's easy to point at those we believe have compromised. But have we looked in the mirror and asked ourselves, exactly what have we done differently and what could we have done differently? That's the checkpoint. I urge you, take the opportunity of this checkpoint, the anniversary, and I mustn't end this, and I cannot end this without asking all of you to, in your own ways, however you can, remember those who died because of this day. Not just Chief MKO Abiola. And whilst he was and remains a symbol to a lot of us, he was some people's father. He was some people's husband. He was a human being living a full life, and he didn't have to die. We must never forget that. We must remember Kudirat Abiola. We must remember the many unnamed persons who are today in unmarked graves. We must also use the opportunity of this checkpoint to rededicate ourselves to ensuring that our children do not have to fight these battles all over, because we have to fight it. The easiest thing to do is to bellyache, but it serves no purpose. If you've heard me this evening, because it's evening at our end in Nigeria, if you have heard me, the least you can do is to become curious about how to come out of this and to find a way to align with those who have offered alternatives. Silence, your silence, when the driver of the bus is reckless, renders you complicit in any accident. The road is an apt metaphor in talking about Nigeria. Everything about the road connects with our reality. The sickening impunity and corruption in road contracts are what? The shoddy nature of job execution, the stupid ways in which the users of the road themselves use the road. Everything about the road speaks to our reality, but it is also in our hand to change our narratives. I could stay here and drone on and on ad infinitum, but it will change nothing. You are the ones who can change something. The system has never ever allowed your will as a collective to prevail because your will is different, completely different from that of your oppressors. They have always ensured that your will do not count. The only way you can reverse that is by ensuring that a process is in place, independent, completely independent of anybody or everybody's will, except that of those who call themselves citizens. Anything outside of that? And you know what? If you don't fight this fight now, your children would have to. And it may not be the kind of fight that they are capable of winning. I believe Somalia has been embroiled in their mess for over 30 years. I know it started Said Barry or something like that, and that must have been back in the 80s. And they are still there today. One ethnicity, one religion. Yorubas will say, Ọmọ ò ní lòun ò kú o. Àwọn òbí ẹ̀ náà nígbà. The child will not say it wouldn't die. It's the parents that will refuse to allow it. It is the action taken by the parents that prevents the child from dying. It is also the actions or inactions of the passengers that will determine whether this bus would crash or knock engine. It's in your hands. I'm not here to bellyache. I'm here to tell you the truth and to tell you what you need to be doing. Find a way to get behind the electoral reform movement. Have you lovely evenings and enjoy the rest of the